The National Board for Wildlife, its history, role and impact. Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week chaired the first full-body meeting of the National Board for Wildlife in more than 12 years. The meeting held in Gujarat Gir National Park on World Wildlife Day, March 3, reviewed a host of wildlife conservation programs. New conservation initiatives for the gharial and Great Indian Bustard were announced, along with an expansion of the cheetah project and initiation of the 16th cycle of lion estimation. The Prime Minister is ex officio chairman of National Board for Wildlife. This was the seventh full body meeting of the board. The last full body meeting, held on September 5, 2012, was chaired by the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who also chaired the previous four meetings. The National Board for Wildlife was created in 2003 following an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Indian Board for Wildlife, established in 1952, was restructured, making it a statutory body, giving it more teeth to implement the Wildlife Protection Act. The National Board for Wildlife is India's apex body which advises the government on the framing of wildlife policy, conservation of wildlife and forests, and setting up new parks and sanctuaries. It has 47 members with the Prime Minister as the chairperson and the Union Environment Minister as vice chairperson. Members include Chief of Army Staff, Secretaries of the Ministries of the Information Broadcasting, Defence and Tribal Affairs. The Director General of Forest, MPs, conservationists, ecologists, environmentalists of the non-government sector are also part of the board. Following an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act, the Indian Board for Wildlife, established in 1952, was restructured and making it a statutory body, National Board for Wildlife. The National Board for Wildlife is India's apex body which advises the government on framing the wildlife policy, conservation of wildlife and forest, and setting up new national parks and sanctuaries. It has 47 members with the Prime Minister as chairperson, and the Union Environment Minister as vice chairperson. Members include Chief of Army Staff, Secretaries of the Ministries of Information and Broadcasting, Defence and Tribal Affairs. The Director General of Forest, MPs, conservationists, ecologists, environmentalists, and five representatives of the non-government sector are also part of the board. The National Board for Wildlife delegates much of its routine work, such as appraising projects inside and around national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, to a standing committee, but this committee's decisions are not binding on the government. Over the past decade, the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife has cleared several development projects in and around wildlife habitats, leading to controversy and projects from ecologists. These include from Dodhan Dam of the Ken Betwa project linking. Over the past decade, Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife has cleared several development projects in and around the wildlife habitats, leading to controversy and protest. These include Dodhan Dam, Dodhan, Dodhan Dam, Dodhan Dam of the Ken Betwa River Linking Project, Dodhan Dam of the Ken Betwa River Linking Project, which submerged almost 100 square kilometers of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve, as well as an oil exploration project of the Vedanta Group in eco-sensitive zone of the Holongapar Gibbon Sanctuary, home to endangered hula gibbon apex species in India. In 2021, the Galathea Bay Sanctuary in Andaman and Nicobar, nesting site of the leatherback sea turtles, was denotified for a large port project, and the reconstitution of Standing Committee in 2014 led to allegations of dilution of its power. Only three non-government members were appointed, of which one was Gujarat Ecological Foundation, Education and Research Foundation, an autonomous body under Gujarat government. The previous Standing Committee of the UPA era had 7 members not linked to the government, 4 conservation experts and 3 representing non-government organizations. The Indian Board for Wildlife came into existence in March 1952 as the Central Board for Wildlife. It was given a new name at its first meeting at the Lalita Mahal Palace in Mysore that year. At the first meeting, Indian Board for Wildlife was split into 4 committees: National Parks, trophies and trading union and state legislatures and administrative matters. Maharaja renamed the Indian Board for Wildlife, remained chairman for Indian Board for Wildlife from 1950s and 60s. February 61, the board declared the peacock was India's national bird. The Board for Wildlife was instrumental in ushering the initial architecture for wildlife conservation. These included enactment of the Wildlife Protection Act, establishment of Gir National Park for Asiatic lions, and declaring tiger as India's national animal. The Wildlife Protection Act laid down the framework for notifying national parks, provided legal backing to wildlife and habitat conservation, banned hunting and poaching of endangered species, and regulated wildlife trade. It also paved the way for Project Tiger in 1973. In his book Indira Gandhi, A Life in Nature, Jairam Ramesh wrote the Indian Board for Wildlife was reconstituted in 1969, and Karan Singh, the Union Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation, was made chairman. Later, Indira Gandhi became chairperson during her tenure. The Keoladeo National Park in Bharatpur was established in 1982 and the National Wildlife Action Plan was adopted. No IBWL meetings were held between 1988 and 1997. On March 13, 1997, Prime Minister H.D. Dev Gowda chaired an Indian Board for Wildlife meeting with tiger crisis and control of poaching and illegal trade on the agenda. Meetings chaired by Manmohan Singh saw the constitution of Tiger Task Force in March 2005 in response to poaching and local extinctions of tigers. The National Board for Wildlife was created in 2003 following an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Indian Board for Wildlife, established in 1952, was restructured, making it a statutory body and giving it more teeth to implement the Wildlife Protection Act. The National Board for Wildlife is India's apex body which advises the government on framing the wildlife policy, conservation of wildlife and forest, and setting up new national parks and sanctuaries. It has 47 members with Prime Minister as chairperson and Union Environment Minister as vice chairperson. Members include Chief of Army Staff, Secretaries of the Ministries of Indian Information and Broadcasting, Defence and Tribal Affairs. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River linking project, which will submerge almost 100 square kilometers of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River linking project, which will submerge almost 100 square kilometers of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River linking project, which will submerge almost 100 square kilometers of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River linking project. Dodhan Dam, Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River linking project. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River interlinking project, which will submerge. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River interlinking project. Dodhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River interlinking project. Oil exploration project of the Vedanta Group in eco-sensitive zone of the Holongapar Gibbon Sanctuary, Holongapar Gibbon Sanctuary, Holongapar Gibbon Sanctuary, home to the endangered Hulak Gibbon, home to the endangered Hulak Gibbon, home to the endangered Hulak Gibbon. Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week chaired the full body meeting of the National Board for Wildlife in more than 12 years. Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week chaired the full body meeting of the National Board for Wildlife in more than 12 years. The meeting held in Gujarat Gir National Park on World Wildlife Day March 3 reviewed a host of wildlife conservation programs. New conservation initiatives for gharial and great Indian bustard were announced, along with an expansion of Cheetah project and initiation of 16th cycle of lion estimation. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week chaired the full body meeting of the National Board for Wildlife in more than 12 years. The meeting held in Gujarat's Gir National Project on World Wildlife Day reviewed a host of wildlife conservation programs, new conservation initiatives for the gharial and Great Indian Bustard were announced along with an expansion of the Cheetah project and initiation of the 16th cycle of lion estimation. The Prime Minister is ex officio chairman of the National Board for Wildlife. This was the seventh full body meeting of the board. The last full body meeting, held on September 5, 2012, was chaired by then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who also chaired the previous four meetings. No Indian Board for Wildlife meetings were held between 1988 and 1997. On March 13, 1997, Prime Minister H.D. Dev Gowda chaired the IBWL meeting with tiger crisis and control of poaching and illegal trade on agenda. Meetings chaired by Manmohan Singh saw the constitution of Tiger Task Force in March 2005 in response to poaching and local extinction of tigers. This was the seventh full body meeting of the board. The last full body meeting, held in 2012, was chaired by the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who also chaired the previous four meetings. The Audhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River Interlinking Project. The Audhan Dam of the Ken-Betwa River Interlinking Project of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve. Of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve. Northern dam of the Ken-Betwa River Interlinking Project, which will submerge almost 100 square kilometers of the Panna National Park and Tiger Reserve, as well as an oil exploration project of the Vedanta Group in the eco-sensitive zone of the Holongopar Gibbon Sanctuary, home to the endangered hula gibbon. In 2021, Galathea Bay Sanctuary in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands was denotified for a large port project. The National Board for Wildlife delegates much of its routine work, such as appraising projects inside and around national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, to a standing committee, but this committee's decisions are not binding to the government. The Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman of the National Board for Wildlife. This was the seventh full body meeting of the board. The last full body meeting, held on September 5, 2012, was chaired by the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Why is it not moving? The National Board for Wildlife was created in 2003 following an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. The Indian Board for Wildlife, established in 1952, was restructured, making it a statutory body, giving it more teeth to implement the Wildlife Protection Act. The National Board for Wildlife is India's apex body, which advises the government on the framing of wildlife policy, conservation and wildlife and forest, and setting up new national parks and sanctuaries. It has 47 members, with the Prime Minister as chairperson and the Union Environment Minister as vice chairperson. Members include the Chief of Army Staff, Secretaries of the Ministries of Information and Broadcasting, Defence and Tribal Affairs, and Department of Expenditure in the Ministry of Defence, Finance. The Director General. So that's all. Next, how US support its farmers. American agricultural producers receive much more government financial assistance than their Indian counterparts, but this is in the form of direct payments rather than input subsidies as in India. As India and US negotiate a trade deal, Washington has insisted that everything including agriculture is on the table. India's farm sector can't stay closed and must open up for American produced, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said last week. In this context, it is relevant to look at the government support that American farmers receive. The US has had only 1.82 million family farms in 2023 compared to India's 93 million agricultural households. As per the National Statistical Office Situation Assessment Survey report of 2019, farmers in the US boast a median household income of $97,000, more than corresponding value of $80,000 of all American households. Yet American farmers receive far more government assistance than their Indian counterparts. The US, unlike India, does not provide subsidies on fertilizers, electricity, or water in order to underprice these inputs used by farmers, nor does its government intervene much on the output since side through physical procurement and stocking of produce. Instead, government support to agricultural producers in the US take place mainly via direct payments. Two major programs of financial assistance are price loss coverage and agricultural risk coverage. These aim at protecting farmers against low prices, revenue shortfalls with respect to 22 crops from wheat, corn, barley, oats, rice, lentils, peas to cotton, soybean and other oil seeds. The US, unlike India, does not provide subsidies on fertilizers, electricity, water in order to underprice these inputs used by farmers, nor does this government intervene much on output side through physical procurement. Instead, government support to agricultural producers take place mainly via direct payments. Two major programs of financial assistance are price loss coverage and agricultural risk coverage. These aim at protecting farmers against low prices or revenue shortfalls with respect to 22 crops from wheat, corn, barley, oats, rice, lentils, and peas to cotton, soybean, and other oil seeds. Price loss coverage payments are triggered when average market price for covered commodity falls below its effective reference price or ERP. An ERP is similar to the minimum support price declared for various crops in India. Although unlike the MSP, it does not require physical purchase of crops by the government. The government directly pays farmers the difference between the market year average price and ERP as PLC. ARC payments, agriculture risk coverage payments are likewise triggered when actual revenue from growing a covered crop falls below a guaranteed level based on benchmark county specific yields and 5-year average market price. Below PLC and ARC, there is a dairy margin coverage program offering producers financial assistance when the margin between the farm gate milk price and average feeds cost falls below a certain threshold level. This again ensures a more stable and predictable income for farmers by protecting against output price declines, input cost surges. The accompanying table gives year-wise gross cash income from sale of produce and other agri-related sources, as well as federal government payments and expenses. It can be seen that direct payments to producers under various federal farm programs has ranged from $9.3 billion to $45 billion in recent years. The 45.6 billion payments in 2020, which included $31.4 billion for pandemic and other supplemental disaster assistance, constituted almost 38% of the net cash income of the US farmers that year. Direct government farm payments are forecast at $42.4 billion for 2025. Much of it account much of it is on account of supplemental and ad hoc disaster assistance to farmers and ranchers under the American Relief Act of 2025. The accompanying table gives year-wise gross cash income. So it is $578 billion. It can be seen that direct payments to producers range from $9.3 billion to $45.6 billion. The $45.6 billion payment in 2020, which included $31.4 billion of pandemic and other supplemental disaster assistance, constituted about 38% of the net cash income of the US farmers that year. Direct government farm payments are forecast at $42.4 billion for 2025. Much of it is on account of supplemental and ad hoc disaster assistance to farmers and ranchers under the American Relief Act of 2025, which the US Congress and then President Joe Biden signed into law in December 2024. The December 2024 report by the US Accountability Office revealed that the total financial assistance to agricultural producers over the 5 years from 2019 to 2023 at about $161 billion. This money was disbursed to by the US Department of Agriculture across 27 programs. So the lessons for India. India has a federal direct income support program, the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, which with an outlay of 63,000 crore in 24-25. Together with central subsidies on fertilizers, 1,71,000, crop loans 22,000 crore, and insurance 15,000 crore, as well as MSP procurement above market rates and stable government expenditures on direct payments and subsidies on electricity and irrigation water, the annual support to Indian farmers may be up to 5 lakh crore or $57 billion. That is more than $32 billion of annual yearly financial assistance to American farmers, uh, going by the GAO report. But the estimated $57.5 billion is spread across several times the number farmers than in the US. US PM Kisan alone has 111 million beneficiaries who receive measly 6,000 each a year. In contrast, the federal payments US farmer equivalent to around 26.8 lakh. To that extent, an opening up of India's agricultural market to US produce would be tantamount to highly unequal competition. Not for nothing do the World Trade Organization rules provide for special and differential treatment to developing countries when it comes to tariffs and safeguarding the interest of domestic producers. Whether this principle of non-reciprocity or developed countries not forcing developing countries to make matching offers in return for trade concessions they grant to the latter will be adhered to in the current in US-India negotiations vis-a-vis agriculture remains to be seen. Why a Peruvian farmer is suing a German energy company? A Peruvian farmer has decided to take German energy giant RWE to court in what might be a landmark case that could shape how the effects of companies' emissions are litigated. Luia, backed by activist German Watch, filed a lawsuit claiming that RWE's greenhouse gas emissions have contributed to melting an Adrian glacier. Holika Dahan and Holi, the origin, legends, and cultural significance. Holika Dahan, as the bonfire is called, will be followed by Holi. The fire symbolizes many things: the triumph of good over evil, the end of winter, and advent of spring, and the incineration of inner faults and purified and rejuvenated self. Holika was the sister of Asura king Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was powerful and arrogant and demanded that his subjects worship him as god. However, his own son Prahlad was devotee of Vishnu, and as the king's wife Kayadhu had lived for some time at the sage Narad's ashram with Prahlad. Hiranyakashipu disliked Lord Vishnu, who had killed his brother Hiranyaksha in his third avatar as Varaha, the boar. So when Prahlad refused to give up the worship of Vishnu, Hiranyakashipu decided to have him killed. He tried many ways, including throwing Prahlad off a cliff and having him trampled by elephant, but the boy was saved by the Lord every time. Finally, Hiranyakashipu's sister Holika stepped in. She had a boon, fire could not harm her, so she walked into flames with Prahlad. However, thanks to his devotion, Prahlad too was saved and Holika was burned to ashes instead. Holika Dahan, or the burning of Holika, recreates this fire and seeks to spread the message that devotion to Lord can guard against powerful and magical adversaries. Hiranyakashipu subsequently decided to kill Prahlad himself. The demon king had a boon from Lord Brahma. He could be killed by neither man nor animal, neither during day or night, neither by shastra or nor ast, neither indoor nor outdoor. To get past these protections, Vishnu took the form of Narsimha, half man, half lion, and killed Hiranyakashipu at dusk on the doorstep of his palace using his claws. The festival of Holies is celebrated on the day Holika Dahan. Holi too is linked with Vishnu in his Krishna avatar. Holi celebrates the arrival of spring. Lord Krishna is in Vrindavan, played with colors to mark the end of winter and arrival of spring. In fact, it is possible that various ancient harvest festivals with events celebrating the arrival of spring eventually came under the umbrella of Holi. Ritual bonfire are also linked with Kamdev, the Hindu god of love. According to the legend, after the death of Sati, Lord Shiva retreated to the mountains to meditate to make him return to the world and marry Parvati. Kamdev disturbed his meditation. A furious Shiva opened his third eye and destroyed Kamdev. When his wife Rati begged for forgiveness, Shiva gave her boon that Kamdev would live on Anang, bodiless form, and be born as Pradyum, the son of Krishna and Rukmani. The celebration of love, desire, and creation is linked to Kamdev and become associated with Krishna too. In fact, one of the many names of Krishna is Madan Gopal. In secular literature, one of the earliest detailed inscriptions of Holi in the Sanskrit play Ratnavali attributed to Harshvardhan, the king of Kannauj. Holi is believed to be the first day in the Samvatsar of the Vedic calendar. Significance of throwing color on each other is to celebrate as a community the arrival of new fruitful season. This refers to the article from Delhi to Port Louis. The geopolitical situation in Indian Ocean region has been intensifying for the last decade. The intervention by the states from outside the littoral has contributed to rising tensions. This has led to classic security dilemma wherein the actions of one state to make itself more secure tend to make another less secure, resulting in a spiral of hostility. Thus, the relevance of New India to global geopolitics arises not just from its growing abilities but also the capabilities to suitor a wider alliance. This refers to the article from Delhi to Port Louis. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Port Louis reflects a deep and enduring ties between the both countries have now elevated to a strategic relationship with the new government led by Naveen Chandra Ramgoolam in power. This visit offers an opportunity to reaffirm and deepen the strategic partnership. From New Delhi, Beijing's increasing footprint in the Indian Ocean region has been a cause of concern. Building an old relationship among littoral states is vital. This refers to the article "Message from the Chagos". The Chagos dispute is a symbol of colonial injustice. Supporting Mauritius' sovereignty over Chagos reinforces India's image as responsible power committed to just and equitable world order. Having said this, India needs to tread carefully while standing against new imperialism. New Delhi must also ensure that its own regional policies do not contradict its moral stance. This refers to the editorial smog over in urban India. Since polluted air has severe consequences, the issue needs to be addressed with utmost urgency. Urban planners should cater for sufficient green spaces, and the administration must adopt initiatives towards clean air. Citizens can contribute by reducing the use of fuzzling vehicles, not burning garbage. Karnataka government has decided to cap movie ticket prices to bring people back to theatres. Low ticket prices is the wrong answer. Revitalization of Kannada film industry needs deeper cultural transformation. And in the recent Karnataka budget, CM Siddharamaiah announced a new swathe of allocations to revitalize Kannada cinema, a film city in Mysuru. There is also anxiety in the Kannada cineverse with regard to poor viewership for unconventional films that breaks out of existing temples. A silver screen for the common man capping ticket prices is crucial to retain working class base of film audiences. A Karnataka's government proposal to cap movie ticket prices at 200 at both multiplexes and single screen, announced in the recent state budget, has led to mixed opinion. While the news might delight moviegoers, it would certainly cause concern among theatre owners, particularly when the decreased revenues post-pandemic have forced several single-screen theatres to close down. Multiplexes aren't doing better as they continue to bleed money any better as they continue to bleed money. Theatre business was once primarily a real estate enterprise where anyone who could afford a sprawling area in a prime location was able to enter it, but the contemporary movie halls demand regular investment in technology and other facilities to attract audiences. In addition, movie halls have to compete with OTT streaming services to offer star-studded films that are both larger than life and expensive to purchase. It is only natural then for theatre owners to attempt to retrieve their huge investments by hiking ticket prices whenever possible. But return on investment is possible only if cinema halls can consistently draw film-going public. In states where ticket prices aren't capped, exorbitant price hikes during prime evening shows, weekends, or when big star films release discourage the traditional movie-going audience. Not to mention the unaffordability of that butter popcorn and parking fee at malls. Before we get to the ticket capping debate, however, it is important to understand India's film-going culture. Here, cinema has primarily been a working class art form, and even among the working class, it is the young male population that makes up the major chunk of the theater audience. Contrast this with the situation confronting Bollywood today, which has not grasped the difference, broadly speaking, between making theatrical films for the working class population and content for niche consumers. OTT platforms. With skyrocketing ticket prices in its traditional markets, Bollywood has driven the working class away from the theaters, turning them into a place for a small group of elites. This also influences the kind of films being produced today. Hindi filmmakers seem clueless about what to make for theaters, replicating OTT-like content for large screen too. This offers no recognizable incentive for even the elite consumer base to leave their homes. In the South, this is not the case. Films retain a strong focus on the working class. The sweeping success of films like Pushpa, KGF, and their respective sequels testify this. Wildlife mismanagement, government ignores seriousness of human-animal conflict, public-private partnerships are needed, must be accountable. On World Wildlife Day this year, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated Vantara, a wildlife rescue, rehabilitation and conservation center, also a private zoo. To give you context, Delhi's zoo is spread across over 200 acres, Vantara is 3,000 acres. On cue, Virat Kohli, Sachin Tendulkar, Shah Rukh Khan, and other high achiever celebrity tweeted pictures and praise. The newly inaugurated facility claims to host the world's largest cheetah conservation project. Outside its perfectly manicured precincts, however, the reality is jarring. In the government's recent 100 crore cheetah relocation exercise, 8 cheetahs and 3 cubs died. This, according to the government's own admission in Parliament in 2023. This exercise was undertaken despite the government's awareness of studies that indicate relocation of birds such as these have only 50% rate of success. This again according to its own admission in Parliament. The challenges surrounding cheetah conservation are just one aspect of a broader attitude of complete abdication of commitment to wildlife. As per the latest estimates of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, there are 73 critically endangered species of animals in the country, a sharp rise from 47 in 2011. The critically endangered great Indian bustard has only about 100 animals left in the wild according to 2022 government data. In 2021, Supreme Court ordered the government to take concrete measures to save and conserve the great Indian bustard. In its reply, the government stated that court's order were practically impossible to implement. The government's priorities are also reflected in budgetary allocations. Project Tiger and Elephant, which were given separate funding earlier, have now been clubbed together. Funding for these projects declined by 23% between 2019 and 2023, with 7 out of 10 states receiving no funding in FY22. Human animal conflict is another centrally sponsored scheme. Development of wildlife habitats saw a 20% reduction. Human animal conflict is another problem that has caused harm to both humans and animals across the country. Between 2019 and 23, elephant attacks caused nearly 2,800 deaths. In Kerala alone, conflicts with wildlife claimed 316 deaths. Despite rising toll, the government's wildlife management approach has been reactive and extreme, evident in the continued shoot-at-sight orders issued across states. In 2016, Union government assured Parliament that no such orders were being issued, only permissions to drive the animal away with stick in certain cases. However, states have continued with the practice. Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan ordered the killing of some wolves and leopards in response to attack on villages. Likewise, Karnataka. Exotic pet trade in India is another issue of concern and a complicated such subject. Recently, the government passed Forest Conservation Amendment Bill 2023. The bill allows sweeping exemptions from forest conservation rules for land located within 100 kilometers of international borders. Line of actual control. Despite such critical amendments, it was rushed through the Lok Sabha with only 4 speakers debating for little over 30 minutes. The allotted time for discussion 3 hours. The Prime Minister's home state has seen deaths of 286 lions, 546 leopards, etc. The CGS rankings further highlight the poor state of Gujarat's animal health care. The one good aspect about philanthropists working on animal welfare is that it will encourage many more to step up. Animals are not vote bank, which makes them non-priority for governments. But when high net worth individuals step in with funds, it will help governments scale up very important work of conservation of wildlife. The other benefit of philanthropists stepping is to boost give to veterinary research. Private funds coming in for animal welfare will encourage greater research in veterinary sciences, and encourage more students to take up veterinary medicine as a career. It is clear that we need a public private partnership to strengthen conservation, but then it should it should truly be that public private partnership. Private philanthropy shall conceive, support research and creative examples with ultimate goal of strengthening state institutions and not just creating a private enterprise with little or no public accountability. The government must be proactive about removing onion export and wheat stocking restrictions. The Narendra Modi government last week lifted a ban on exports of broken rice in place since 2022. It's high time that it also scraps a 20% duty on onion exports and stock holding limits on wheat. The reason is that harvesting of both crops is underway. According to Agriculture Ministry, farmers have sown 324 lakh hectares of wheat, 10 lakh hectares under onion in the current Rabi season, as against 318 lakh hectares and 8.6 lakh hectares. Ground reports suggest bumper production in onions. It is evidenced by the wholesale prices in Maharashtra's Lalsagon market falling below 1500 per quintal from the 2300 plus at the month's start. As for wheat, the ministry has itself estimated a record output of 115.4 million tons. The veracity of that will be known in the coming days. A lot hinges on there being no sudden temperature spikes detrimental to yields during terminal grain filling stage. Either way, the supply situation in food commodities, maybe with an exception of sugar and edible oils, is comfortable compared to what it was even 3 months back. Wheat stocks in government godowns on March 1, 13.4 megaton were higher than 9.7 metric ton a year ago. Mustard is selling in Rajasthan mandis as well at well below the government's minimum support price. The overall improved supply position is also borne out by annual consumer food price inflation dripping to 3.75% in February from 10.87% in October. March so far hasn't seen any heatwave conditions of the kind last year that were a trigger for the surge in prices. The mild La Nina conditions, as opposed to the devastating 2023 El Nino, have probably helped in ensuring a near normal winter this time. But that's also a reason for Modi government to be proactive. Either way, the supply situation in food commodities, maybe with the exception of sugar and edible oils, is comfortable compared to what it was 3 months back. Wheat stocks in the government go down. So at March 1, 13.4 metric tons was higher than 9.7 metric ton a year ago. Mustard is selling in Rajasthan mandis at well below the government's minimum support price. But there is also a reason for Modi government to proactive about removing export and stocking restrictions. India should avoid repetitions of the cobweb cycle of farmers overproducing crops in response to higher prices and subsequent price collapse leading to underproduction and price increase in the following year. The best way to address this is by keeping both the export and import window open while also allowing the produce to move and be stocked freely within the country. Onion growers are justified in feeling angry over curbs on exports which are imposed on the moment the domestic prices start rising. The same alacrity is missing when it comes to lifting them, leave alone when prices crash. Indian agriculture can thrive with greater market orientation and there's no better time for it than when the worst supply crisis is over. Chandrayaan 3 finding on water ice on moon is a significant breakthrough. It is a part of larger Indian success story. Data from one of the instruments on Chandrayaan 3 has indicated that the presence of water on the moon could be more widespread than known so far. A research team at the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad, which analyzed the data from chased instrument on board the Vikram lander, has come to the conclusion That were strong possibilities of water ice sheets being present in areas outside polar regions as well. As of now, water ice on the moon is known to be concentrated in the polar regions. The latest finding is on another significant breakthrough by the Indian space community and builds on the knowledge created in this field by Chandrayaan-1. Two instruments on Chandrayaan-1, one of them from NASA, has confirmed the presence of water on the moon and found definitive evidence of water ice in the polar regions. Space is one of the areas in which India has been functioning almost at a cutting edge of technology, particularly in the last 15 to 20, 10 to 15 years, when it has started venturing into ambitious exploration activities. The number of missions has been relatively small, but they have produced fruitful outcomes. Women engaged as ASHA workers need wages, not honorarium. Tamil Nadu government replaces rupee symbol with Tamil letter. In state budget logo draws centre ire. Centre must focus on North's progress instead of threatening us, Tamil Nadu minister. Identify areas where US goods can be chosen over China. Government asks industry. Sweeping US tariffs have hit $5 billion in MSME steel exports exporters to government. Amid fears of export disruption to the US reciprocal tariff set to take effect April 2, the Ministry of Commerce asked the industry to identify areas where sourcing from China and other countries can be replaced by American goods. Executives familiar with the development told. This comes days after US President Donald Trump criticized India's highest tariffs in the automobile and the agriculture sector. The government is working on tariff cuts and market access to avoid sweeping US tariffs that are reshaping global trade. On reciprocal tariffs, the Goyal urged exporters to move beyond a protectionist mindset and encouraged them to be bold. On reciprocal tariffs, Goyal urged exporters to move beyond a protectionist mindset and encouraged them to be bold. ISRO undocks satellites shot an arm for its future missions. Nearly 2 months after the ISRO successfully demonstrated its docking capability, it disengaged and undocked two satellites SDX-01, SDX-02 at 9:20 am Thursday, 13th. This capability is essential for future ISRO missions such as exploring the moon, human spaceflight, and building own space station. The two satellites, Chaser and Target, are now moving independently in the orbit. For the undocking process, SDX-02 arm connected to satellites was extended and capture levers released, and then two satellites were given the command to separate. The capability to dock and undock is key to Chandrayaan-4, which is to bring back samples from the moon. For the Bharati Antariksh Station, 5 modules will be launched separately to join the space to create the space station. Stay on Maharashtra Agri Minister's conviction, court sides election caused. Cookiezo Group lifts shutdown, trucks to start moving again. The Cookiezo Council on Thursday evenings announced the lifting of shutdown it had imposed in the Cookiezo areas in Manipur since March 8, but made it clear that it continues to oppose the union government's free movement plan. The Cookiezo Council on Thursday evening announced the lifting of the shutdown it had imposed in the Cookiezo areas of Manipur since March 8. The council had announced the indefinite shutdown after the clashes between Cookiezo protesters and security forces in the Kangpokpi district on March 8, left a youth dead and injured many others. The protesters were trying to prevent the movement of a bus from a Meaty majority valley through a Kuki-Zo majority district on the first day that the government attempted to enforce the free movement initiative in the strife-torn state. We would like to officially announce the lifting of the indefinite shutdown previously called by the Kuki-Zo Council with effect from 7:30 p.m. The decision to end the shutdown comes after careful deliberation. However, it is imperative to make clear that while the shutdown has been lifted, free movement as announced by the Home Ministry shall be vehemently opposed by the Kuki-Zo people as it undermines and dilutes the justice process. Until justice is duly served for the Kuki-Zo people and move toward unrestricted free movement will be vigorously opposed. In a security meeting, Union Home Minister Amit Shah told security forces to enable free movement, that is, to ensure that Meiteis are able to pass through the hill areas of the state and Kuki-Zos can come to the Imphal Valley, something that has not been possible safely entire for either community since the start of the conflict. Two state-run buses with paramilitary escort were flagged off from Imphal on March 8, the violence in Kangpokpi took place after one of them arrived there. Around 450 loaded trucks carrying goods to Imphal have been stranded on National Highway 2 in Naga majority Senapati district because of the shutdown. Delimitation. Government to set up $1 billion fund for creative economy Vaishnav, 400 crore for first creative tech institute. The government has decided to set up a fund of $1 billion for the country's creative economy. Vaishnav was addressing reporters on the sidelines of session with ambassadors and high commissioners to brief them on the first Waves World Audio, Visual and Entertainment Summit being held in Mumbai from May 1 to 4. CEOs and creators from all over the world will join the summit. We are also setting up a fund of $1 billion in public-private partnership. The first Indian Institute of Creative Technology is being established in Mumbai with funds of about 400 crore. Spend on urban schemes at 51% of budget estimates, ministry cites few state claims. Can religion be regulated by law when Narasu remarried in 1950? Narasu Appamali was convicted under the Bombay Prevention of Hindu Bigamous Marriage Act for marrying a second time while his first wife was alive. In 1951, Bombay High Court upheld the law. It was landmark ruling for the first time on interplay of personal law and fundamental rights. From the Shah Banu ruling Muslims' right to maintenance to the Sabrimala, the complex nature of personal law has shaped the debate on the gender issues. The Narsaro ruling on the extent to which personal laws can be regulated will be crucial as the debate on uniform civil code picks up. An onion can make people cry, but there's never been a vegetable that can make people laugh. TRAI may restrict Starlink SATCOM firms to mobile dark spot regions. Currently, satellite signals cannot be received directly on standard mobile devices, and SATCOM devices are significantly more expensive than conventional mobile phones. By restricting satellite services to areas lacking mobile coverage, TRAI would be able to evaluate market dynamics and role of SATCOM operators in bridging the digital divide. Five companies are vying to provide satellite internet services: Eutelsat, OneWeb, GeoSES, Starlink, and Amazon Kuiper. Bharti backed OneWeb and GeoSES have already received regulatory clearances. There will be many AI agents. You will need AI chief of staff. Putin agrees with US proposal for Ukraine ceasefire. Terms need to be worked out. President Duda urges US to place nukes in Poland. Poland's president has called on the US to transfer nuclear weapons to its territory as a deterrent against future Russian aggression. Armenia-Azerbaijan agree to end 40 years of conflict. Armenia and Azerbaijan officials said on Thursday that they have agreed the text of a peace agreement to end the nearly 4 decades of conflict between South Caucasus countries. Caucasus countries. The two post-Soviet Union have fought a series of wars when Nagorno-Karabakh, a region near Azerbaijan that has a mostly ethnic Armenian population at the time, broke away from Azerbaijan. So that's all in this one. See you in the next.